Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, Labour's promised that the UK will be able to free itself of burdensome EU regulation after Brexit. You heard that during the referendum campaign. But have Theresa May and David Davis allowed resolving issues over the Irish border to put paid to these hopes? Here's Elizabeth to explain.
Thanks, Andrew. Well, at the heart of this issue is the UK's border with the Republic of Ireland. Currently, people and goods move freely across as many as 275 crossing points along the 310-mile border. Now, there are no customs controls or border posts because the rules of the EU single market mean that goods can move freely. Both countries adhere to broadly the same rules and regulations which are set by the EU. But after Brexit, the UK could diverge from those rules and regulations, so EU law would require the Republic of Ireland to check goods as they cross the border. Now, Dublin fears that any physical border could undermine the Good Friday Agreement that brought peace to Northern Ireland after years of conflict. Many in the north are also very concerned. Now, the Irish government has made preventing a so-called hard border a red line in the Brexit negotiations. On Monday, the two sides seemed near to agreement with the promise of regulatory alignment after Brexit, in the absence of any other agreement. That would mean the same rules and regulations applying on both sides of the border, with no need for customs controls. But, as we now know, the DUP, who Theresa May relies on to prop up her minority government, has rejected any solution which treats Northern Ireland differently to the rest of the UK. Yesterday, the Brexit Secretary told the Commons that regulatory alignment would actually apply right across the UK. But that prospect has enraged many Leave supporters who believe that tackling what they see as burdensome regulation is the key marker for making a success of Brexit. Andrew.
Thank you for that. Greg Hans, let me come to you again. Before we go into the substance of this, let me ask this. Did nobody in the government think to run this agreement past the DUP?
Well, I don't know the ins and outs of that conversation. We talk to the DUP on a regular basis. What I would say, Andrew, the objective here is everybody has the same objective between both the Irish government, ourselves,
sure,
and the
Commission.
Commission.
I'll come on to that, but I want to get this. The
Border.
DUP keeps you in power. You've done a deal with them, you have a minority government, and you need DUP votes to stay in power. Here is a crucial part of the Brexit negotiations directly affecting the DUP, on which the DUP had strong views. Did nobody run this agreement past the DUP before the Prime Minister agreed to sign it?
I'm not going to comment on the individual workings of how the government discussions with other parties in Parliament work. Because that's properly something in terms of the internal workings of government.
Well, it's clear they didn't, isn't it? It's clear they didn't. The DUP said they didn't see it to the last minute. That's why Mrs May had to leave her lunch with Jean-Claude Juncker. You didn't show it to them. Why did you not show it to them?
Can I just point out, Andrew, there's been a lot of misunderstanding about what is meant here by alignment as well. What is meant by alignment?
I'm going to come on to alignment. Can you just finish? Can we agree that you didn't run it past the DUP? Not you personally. The government didn't do it. And that's why it's in the mess it is today.
No, I'm not going to comment on the internal workings of government with the DUP.
Let me ask you this on regulatory alignment. In the agreement, does that refer only to Northern Ireland or to the UK?
What the word alignment refers to is the north-south aspects of cooperation in the Belfast Agreement, the Good Friday Agreement. It does not refer to the customs union or to the single market, and that is where the misunderstanding has occurred with relation to this.
But does the agreement, still unsigned, commit the UK to regulatory alignment only for Northern Ireland or for all of the UK?
Well, that is something that is part of those talks with the European Union at the moment.
You don't know.
The important thing on the alignment is that it doesn't refer to the customs union of the single market. It refers to the north-south areas of cooperation in the Belfast Agreement.
But sitting here today, after the Prime Minister has been unable to sign this agreement, but it does exist, you cannot tell our viewers if regulatory alignment refers to the whole of the UK.
No, I'm saying that the phrase alignment on Monday and Tuesday referred to the north-south aspects of the Belfast Agreement.
So why did David Davis say in the Commons then was that everything we talked about applied to the whole United Kingdom?
Because that was not in reference to the alignment. That was in terms of the UK's future in the customs union and single market. And
Actually,
that is the difference.
he did use the phrase regulatory alignment, not that people are really clear what it means. But let me ask you a more specific question. If the deal refers to Northern Ireland staying aligned with the rest of the EU on those matters in the Good Friday Agreement, like energy and agriculture, are those elements in the Good Friday Agreement, does that apply to the rest of the UK?
Well, there'll be nothing that endangers the territorial integrity of the United Kingdom,
I didn't ask
particularly
that.
in reference to Northern Ireland, when it comes to the actual agreement.
I didn't ask
but
that.
a lot of this is still flowing, Andrew. A lot of this is still being discussed and still being debated.
Right.
I am confident we will get to a good position because it's strongly in the
You may be,
mutual
but you
interest to do
can't
so.
answer a simple question.
Well, I
So
talked to you about the alignment aspect.
Let me come to our Labour spokesman here. This is about the single market, it's about the customs union, because this government has decided it's going to leave membership of both. It's having to come up with arrangements to suit Northern Ireland or to accommodate Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. So they're quite fundamental things. So on Labour's position, when John McDonnell says we must leave the single market and Keir Starmer says we should stay in the single market, who speaks for Labour?
Well, I mean, the whole point is that David Davis offered us the exact same benefits of the European Union. So we're into this situation now where the government haven't asked their principal partner in this government about the arrangements.
I understand that, and I've gone through the minister with that. I asked you not about the government, but about Labour. I'll ask you again. When John McDonnell says we must leave the single market and Keir Starmer says we should stay in the single market, who speaks for Labour?
Well, it's self-evident that when you leave the European Union, you are leaving the single market and the customs union. That's de facto. But it's getting to a position as near as damn it, Andrew, that gives us those benefits. And what Keir has set out very clearly is that we should not be removing those options. If you just take them off the table, you've just removed the opportunity to have that discussion and move the agenda forward.
But Keir Starmer now says we should stay in the single market.
Well, he said that remains a possibility, but we de facto come out of the European Union on the day. Now, if we can have a transition period that keeps us in the single market and the customs union for the duration of the transition period, that makes eminent sense to me to allow us to negotiate something that's going to accommodate our ambitions, much aligned with David Davis'
When Barry
promise.
Gardner, another Labour spokesman, says staying in the customs union would be a disaster, and Keir Starmer says we should stay in the customs union, who's right?
We're saying that the option of staying in the union shouldn't be removed at this stage.
Barry Gardner says it'd be a disaster.
Well, I'm not sure that I don't know where that's come from and what
From
context.
his mouth.
Well, you know, but there may have been words that led up to that, Andrew. You're giving them to me in isolation. What I'm saying to you is that the transitional period that we have promoted keeps that available.
Well, can I just point out, when these two issues came up in the Commons, Mr Corbyn whipped Labour MPs to vote against the single market and against the customs union. He whipped them. And those who defied the whip, the rebels, were fired. So given he did that, and now we're being told we can stay in the single market, what on earth is Labour's policy?
Well, simply as I've set out, Andrew, that we should have a transitional period where the environment, the regulatory environment, is exactly the same as it is now, for us to find that time to negotiate a settlement that suits.
So why were people fired for voting against
Kingdom.
the single market if you're now in favour of it?
There was actually a vote 2 weeks ago, Andrew, where
to be
Labour
putting
split
those red
three
lines
ways.
It's
down.
the same point.
Labour
Why were
split
people
three ways
sacked
2 weeks
for
ago.
voting for membership of the single market when you're now saying that's Labour policy?
Well, to lay it down at that stage as a red line, I think, you know, I think government's calling the Labour Party in chaos,
It's total chaos
given
on
the
the
nonsense
basic
over the
issue.
last 48 hours.
The
It's quite
basic issue.
frankly,
Keir seems to be
calling
quite
kettle black. You know, so-
Keir seems, from where I sit, Keir is the default position at the moment in this debate. Let me try one time. If you're so much in favour of membership of the single market, Why were MPs who voted in favour of it fired by Mr Corbyn?
Well, at that time, Andrew, is setting down as a red line that was the only option available to us was deemed to be the wrong decision for us at the time. So it's perfectly proper for us to hold that position.
Can you give any example of a country that is a member of the single market but doesn't have free movement?
Well, people have got Norway have got their own arrangements.
They have free
Switzerland
movement.
have got their own arrangements.
They
as
have
well.
free movement.
We've got to. We're a different economy. We're infinitely.
But there is
bigger
no
than those.
example. The price of membership is free movement, isn't it?
Of movement when we leave the European Union goes. It's then for us to write our immigration policy as we see fits our economy, rather than just simply pulling up the drawbridge and damning the economy, as some people seem
the
prone to do.
difference between regulatory alignment and regulatory harmonisation?
Well, the difference is whether you mutually recognise each other's regulations or whether you actually make those regulations broadly the same.
But wouldn't we have to recognise their regulations under the deal that your Prime Minister was going to sign?
Well, different free trade agreements operate in different ways, and that you can agree mutually to recognise each other's regulations without necessarily having the same regulations.
If we wanted to cut our corporation tax to 10%, would that fall within alignment or be outside alignment?
Well, at the moment, we could, if we wanted to, cut our corporation tax to 10% as full members of the European Union.
But under this agreement, would it be?
Well, there's no way that the agreement is going to prevent us doing an activity that we could do at the moment whilst we are in the European Union, Andrew.
OK, we'll leave it there, but no doubt we'll come back to it, because all this is still unresolved. No sign of the Prime Minister going back to Brussels tomorrow yet. She's got till the weekend.